Hi, Mrs. and Mr. E. How are you today? I'm glad you could join me to discuss me and her progress so far this year and how we're going to work to improve on some things. I want to start out by saying she's wonderful. She's a wonderful and hardworking student. I have actually recently begun to work with her a little extra in a small group on a few things with 2 other students, which we were talking about a little later, and she's always so excited and never complains. Sometimes she even reminds me that I'm supposed to pull them. But to begin with, I want to go over some weekly data that I collect from all of my students, but this is specifically B's data from our weekly assessments. So every week we take a benchmark assessment that tests students on the comprehension skill we have been working on for that week. For example, this week our skill was author's purpose, so the questions are focused on that skill. The test also asks a lot of vocabulary questions. Sometimes there are words that students aren't really familiar with and they need to really go back in the passage and find those words and use their context clues to figure out the meaning to answer those questions correctly. On this week's test, B scored a 92%, which is wonderful because it's out of 100. The class average was 86%, so she was actually higher than the average. This is really an improvement from the beginning of the year when she was scoring below 60%. So I think the extra work in these small groups are really helping her become successful. However, her weekly spelling scores are a little lower. You can see that she has scored a 53% on our recent test, and the class average was a 77%. This really measures her phonics, and phonics is basically connecting the correct sounds to the correct letters or letter correspondence. I have noticed that her scores fluctuate depending on the skill of the week. So I'd really like to go back and look at her previous scores and pick those scores that are lower than others so we can focus on those skills specifically and work on building off of those. Next, each week we measure fluency. Her fluency, for this, we have her read aloud, and we listen to her reading, and we actually time her for a minute on our weekly fluency. So on our most recent one, her reading rate was 94 words per minute. According to this, she is on target for end of year average rates, which is between 90 and 135 words per minute. However, with the IRI, which we will later discuss more in detail, she read 72 words per minute, and this is below the end of year average rate and below our class average of 108 words read correctly. B's weekly fluency rate for this week was also below the class average of 108, which we have a lot of higher readers in our class, so that could be why our class average is a little higher than her. But fluency is something I'd really like to work on her with because there's other aspects that go into it other than just the reading rate, such as her expression when she's reading and her word recognition and how that plays a role in the fluency. Fluency just really, it plays a big part in comprehending the text, and I think if she's able to fluently read, then she'll be better at comprehending the text. And I just really want to test further on this because I received those 2 very different scores. And as I discussed, there's more that goes into it. So basically, to be a fluent reader, the reader should be able to automatically notice the words, so that's that word recognition that they are reading. They should be able to read with accuracy and with the correct speed. Depending on the passage you're reading, the speed and expression could change. And those are the 3 main components of being a fluent reader, and that I would like to focus on with B, especially the speed, since hers fluctuates, and I really want her on target for that end of year average. As well as these weekly tests, we take a test once each 9 weeks. These are called AIM scores. They're for the district. Her October They also measure comprehension and vocabulary, as do her benchmark tests, which we've already discussed. Her AIM scores have improved greatly as well. In October, she scored a 52%. In January, she scored 73%. And in March, she scored an 82%. So I actually made a chart to show this. You can see how she has increased throughout the year, and we hope she increases even more with our fourth AIMS test. Now let's move on to the IRI. So an IRI is an informal reading assessment. The IRI helps me establish her reading instructional level and helps me see her strengths and weaknesses. We want to know both because her strengths show us what we can build on and her weaknesses show us what she might need extra practice with. So it's basically at what level she should be taught at. Before I show you this though, I want to go over the 3 levels that we measure by. It's the independent level, the instructional level, and non-frustrational level. The independent level is what she can do or read by herself without support. So without me being there with her, this is things that she can do independently. The instructional level is the level at which instruction is provided and support is given by the teacher or maybe even a partner in a group she's in. And the frustration level is the level where the student shouldn't be working by herself and probably couldn't work by herself. So the first thing we're going to go over is the word recognition. That is, how many words does she automatically know without needing to sound out or decode. There are 6 different levels of this. The pre-primer, so preschool level, all the way to 4th grade is what we tested her on, and we'll go over those. So for the pre-primer, she scored 100% on the flash. Flash and untimed is flashes. They're given a few seconds. They automatically know that word. Untimed is they have as long as they need to try to decode the word. So she didn't need to decode any of those. For the kindergarten level, she scored a 95% and 100%. First grade level, a 90% and 100%. Her word recognition still pretty good. The second grade, a 90% flash and 100% untimed. So given those extra few seconds, she's able to automatically read those words. Her third grade level, it drops a little bit for her automatically being able to read it, but she's able to decode all but 2 of the words that I gave her, scoring a 90% still. 4th grade, it dramatically dropped to a 40%, and she was able to correct 50% of those words that she read incorrectly, and she hesitated on a lot of those words actually. So for this, I would say that her instructional levels are pretty much until 3rd grade, leaving 4th grade at her frustrational level. So she's pretty much on target for that. However, I would still like to build upon that and work with her word recognition so her toolbox is fuller of words when she's reading. Next, we go over her oral reading. So these are passages that she has read aloud to me, and I can see how fluently she reads the passage and how well she comprehends it. Her scores are for reading accuracy is how many words she read correctly while reading. Her comprehension rate, I've asked her either 4, 5, or 6 questions, and that's how many questions she answered correctly, and her rating is how fast she read that passage. So we started with 2nd grade. She scored a 94% on reading accuracy, a 90% on comprehension, and her rate was 86 words read per minute. Next is 3rd grade. Her comprehension drops a little bit. Her reading accuracy doesn't really, she maybe missed 1 or 2 more words than before, but her rate was a little bit slower. So her reading accuracy was a 93%, her comprehension was 67%, and her words read per minute were 72. So next we kind of hit her frustration level. Her reading accuracy is at an 89%. Her comprehension drops to 50%, so she was only able to answer 3 out of the 6 questions I asked her, and her rate is much lower at a 56 words read per minute. And this is for her oral reading, so as she's reading aloud. And that's another thing. Earlier I showed you her rate for her IRI, and I said it was 72. That was actually for her silent reading, so her oral reading was a 72 was for 3rd grade, 56 was for 4th grade. So next we kind of tested her on how she comprehends when she silently reads something and how fast she silently reads. Her comprehension, we started her out at 1st grade, and her comprehension was a 75%. This isn't, I was thinking she would score 100%, being that she's in 3rd grade, but she was only able to answer about 3 of the questions I asked her, and her reading rate was 91 words read in that minute. Next was 2nd grade. Her comprehension dropped to a 50%. So this is her frustration level. Just to see if it was maybe the passage we read, I tested her on the 3rd grade, but she also scored a 50%, meaning she only got half the questions I asked right. And her words read per minute was 78. I would really like to improve on her silent reading. I encourage her already to whisper read when we're taking a test or working on something independently, because I can tell that she comprehends better when she is reading aloud. To help with this, I hope to teach her strategies she can use when she's not understanding what she's reading, such as rereading, asking herself, do I understand this? And if she doesn't, to reread or read around it to try to figure out the meaning of what she's reading. So along with fluency, this is going to be another one of our focuses. Spelling varies depending on the skill, which I've said for first grade she scored 70%. She got 7 of the 10 words I asked her to spell correctly. 2nd grade she drops to 40%. 3rd grade 70% again, and then she becomes frustrational for sure at 4th grade with 30%. All in all, her levels, I would say, depending on the skill, independently, I feel comfortable leaving her with at the preschool level to 2nd grade, especially if she's whisper reading or I'm reading to her. Her instructional level is at 3rd grade, that means she's on target, and her frustration level is at 4th grade. Hopefully, we're hoping to expand on this because I want her to be ready for 4th grade. Along with her, back to her spelling, I noticed that she really mixes up her D's with G's and J's, so this is something I specifically want to work on and address with her. But it is my goal to work with her on strategies to better help her understand what she is reading while silently reading, really focusing on her spelling and looking back at those scores so I can figure out what she needs review on, and other skills and strategies she can use to help her comprehend a text, whether orally reading or silently reading, as well as working on her rate while reading, so to bring up those how many words she can read in a minute so that we hit that end of the year average target that most students are at. All in all, I think she's going to continue to improve. She already has shown improvement. I just want to work on these things just a little bit more with her, and maybe one-on-one and in that small group that I'm working with her in. So thanks for meeting with me, and I look forward to keeping you up to date on her progress. Thank you.